You want the promise, you want the dream, the mountaintop, the view from the summit where the air is clean, where the applause echoes, where the world finally sees what you always knew you were capable of. But here's the hard truth. You don't get the promise without surviving the process. And the process does not negotiate. It does not compromise. It demands everything. Everybody wants to be free. But not everybody wants the discipline that makes freedom possible. Everybody wants results, but few are willing to carry the silence, the waiting, the pain, when nothing seems to be working. That's the divide. That's the line between fantasy and destiny. And most people, they never cross it. They talk like they're building something, but they're building castles in the sand. They run on passion until it burns out. They pray for purpose, but avoid pressure. They want the crown without the cross. But the only way to wear the promise is to bleed through the process. Let me tell you something nobody's saying loud enough. The process is the proving ground. It's where God watches what you do when nobody's clapping. When you have no followers, no finances, no clear map. It's where greatness either cracks or crystallizes. You think you're waiting on a breakthrough, but the breakthrough is waiting on you to outlast the silence, to obey even when it's dry, to stop asking for shortcuts, and to stay when everything in you wants to run. The process is where you learn to obey when you're offended, where you move without understanding, where you stand in the dark with nothing but your decision, and that decision becomes your light. You won't be rewarded for what you intended to do. You'll be rewarded for what you endured, because the process doesn't care about your feelings. It was never supposed to feel good. It was supposed to form you. Walt Disney went bankrupt. Lincoln failed at nearly every election. Edison tried 10,000 times. Ford was laughed out of meetings. Carnegie was ridiculed for dreaming too big. They all had one thing in common. They refused to bow out when the process started hurting. They didn't run, they built through it. You don't become what you dream about. You become what you can survive. Let that sink in. Because we live in a culture obsessed with the reward, obsessed with the highlight reel. But success was never built in spotlights. It was built in shadows. And if you want to build something that lasts, you've got to get comfortable being invisible. You've got to trust the hammer that shapes you, the pruning that prepares you, the waiting that doesn't waste your time but rewires your mind. Because the truth is, the promise you want is too heavy for the person you are right now. That's why the process exists, to grow your grip, to stretch your spine, to strengthen the parts of you that can't be faked. You think it's punishment, but it's preparation. You think God is delaying, but He's developing. He's not ignoring your promise. He's investing in your process. That door you want, it's real. But if you walk through it now, it'll crush you. You'll self-destruct under the weight of what you're not ready to carry. So the silence, that's strategy. The grind, that's grace. The confusion, it's carving out clarity by making you dig deeper than you ever have before. Most people want the finish line. Few want the mile 32 breakdown, the swollen feet, the mental collapse, the moment you stare at the road ahead and wonder if you're delusional. But hear this, that moment when everything in you screams quit. That's when most walk away, and that's why most never touch the promise. But you were made for more. You've been called to stay longer than your emotions want to choose faith over comfort, to love the craft more than you crave the credit. You want success. Show up when it's boring. You want the dream, protect it in seasons of drought. You want to lead. Learn how to follow discipline, not dopamine. Most people will sacrifice their future just to feel better in the moment. They'll trade consistency for convenience. They'll give up the grind for the guarantee of ease. But your calling doesn't speak in comfort. It speaks in commitment. And here's the twist most don't expect. The process doesn't get easier. You just get stronger. You stop flinching at difficulty. You stop asking, Why is this happening to me? And you start declaring, this is building me. That's when the shift happens. When you realize the pressure is not your enemy, it's your birth canal. The pain. It's pushing purpose to the surface. The resistance. It's the gym where your identity is trained. And in that transformation, something strange happens. You start to want the process, not because it's easy, not because it's fun, but because you realize this is where the real you is forged. Every skipped party, every early morning, every workout, no one saw every dollar reinvested when you could have splurged. It's all building the version of you that can carry the promise without dropping it. Because let's be honest, how many people get everything they wanted, only to crumble when they get it? Fame without character. Success without standards. Wealth without wisdom. They prayed for the spotlight, but they skipped the dark room. And now they've got the platform but no internal pillars to hold it up. That won't be you, because you don't just want the promise. You want the power to handle it. You want the clarity to stay focused when everyone else is distracted. You want the maturity to stay kind when you're under pressure. You want the endurance to keep walking when the road disappears under your feet. That's what the process is teaching you. That's why it hurts, because it's cutting away everything that can't come with you. It's pruning the ego, silencing the noise, burning the bridges back to who you used to be. And hear me, the old you, the one who negotiated with discipline, the one who chased applause before alignment, the one who needed motivation to move. That version has to die. Not later, not someday, now. Because until you bury who you were, you'll keep sabotaging who you're becoming. You'll keep self-selecting out of opportunities you were born for. You'll keep tolerating mediocrity because it's familiar. You'll keep dancing with distractions instead of marrying your mission. But the process, it's not here to punish you. It's here to make that transition unavoidable. It's here to make comfort so painful, you're forced to evolve. Think about a snake. It sheds its skin because the old layer becomes too tight for its new growth. That tension, it's not a sign to retreat. It's a sign to release. So stop trying to carry your old thinking into new territory. Stop asking for transformation while clinging to your limitations. Stop praying for overflow when you're still operating with a scarcity grip. Let go. Let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the fantasy of ease. Let go of the dream that doesn't demand your discipline. Because the process will not adapt to you. You must adapt to it. Do you think David defeated Goliath because he was lucky? Because he had better weapons? No, he won because the process prepared him. While his brothers were chasing glory on the battlefield, David was in the fields alone, obeying, building, slinging stones. When the opportunity came, he didn't rise to the occasion. He fell back on preparation. That's what the process is giving you. Right now, while nobody's watching. Right now, while it feels like you're going nowhere. Right now, while the enemy whispers that you're crazy for still trying. But you're not crazy. You're chosen. You're not behind. You're being built. You're not stuck. You're in process. And if you could only see what's on the other side, you'd stop fighting the fire. You'd thank it. Because it's burning away everything that's keeping you small. Every hero you admire, every success story, every visionary, every giant of industry. They were all tempered in this furnace. They were all broken open, refined, stretched beyond their limits, and they came out unshakable. Why? Because they understood the process was never the delay. It was the design. The process isn't meant to be pretty. It's meant to be precise. It carves, it cuts, it chisels away everything that can't stand the weight of the promise. You want impact, you'll need integrity. You want influence, you'll need identity. You want success, then prepare for sacrifice. Because every promise has a price. And the people who pretend otherwise, the ones selling shortcuts and shiny secrets, they don't tell you the full truth. They don't show you the tears behind the triumph, the 10,000 unseen moments behind the 10 seconds of spotlight. But the legends, the immortals, they'll tell you the process was everything. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb by accident. He failed 10,000 times, and each time, the process taught him something the promise never could. He didn't just create a solution. He became the kind of man who could. Because that's what the process does. It doesn't just give you what you want. It turns you into someone who's ready for it. Think about that. You're not waiting on a breakthrough. The breakthrough is waiting on you, on your consistency, your devotion, your willingness to show up without applause. You see, most people stop here, when it gets heavy, when the growth gets inconvenient, when it demands more than they thought they'd have to give. But not you. You're still listening. You're still leaning in. You're still building in the dark because you believe the light is coming. And let me tell you, that belief is dangerous, because it means you won't quit when it hurts. You won't fold when it's lonely. You won't trade your destiny for distraction. You'll keep writing the vision. You'll keep speaking it when no one understands. You'll keep walking even when your legs are shaking. Because something inside you knows. You're not just chasing a promise. You're honoring a process that's been molding you for this exact moment. And that kind of mindset, that kind of devotion, it makes you unstoppable. Because it's no longer about motivation, it's about identity. You've become the kind of person who can carry it. You're not guessing anymore. You're grounded. You're not hoping for change. You're creating it one disciplined choice at a time. When the old temptations show up, you don't negotiate. When the fear creeps in, you don't shrink. You've seen too much. You've paid too much. You've built too much to go back. That's what the process has done. It's removed the back door, burned the exit plan, and buried the version of you that used to settle. Because once you know who you're becoming, there's no unknowing it. There's no going back to average. No more playing small just to make other people comfortable. And now you're dangerous. Not because you're perfect, but because you're persistent. You're not driven by hype. You're moved by honor for your calling. Honor for your future self. Honor for the process that most people reject. Because most people, they want the crown, but not the cross. They want the stage, but not the silence. They want the glory, but not the grind. But you're not most people. You're part of the few, the quiet few, the faithful few, the ones who say yes to the fire and come out forged in purpose. So let them scroll, let them scoff, let them chase noise. You're after something real, something earned, something sacred. The kind of legacy that isn't just remembered, it's felt. Because it wasn't built in a moment. It was built through the process. The process doesn't flatter your ego, it confronts it. It doesn't soothe your pride, it strips it. Because what you're stepping into isn't a performance. It's a purification. It burns off the excuses. It breaks the lies you tell yourself to stay small. And then, when there's nothing left but truth, it rebuilds you. And that's where most people tap out. They confuse discomfort with a sign to turn back. They think pain means they're going the wrong way. But listen carefully. Discomfort doesn't mean wrong. It means raw. It means you're in the place where transformation actually happens. Most people never get that far. They pray for the promise, but run from the preparation. They want the impact, but not the intimacy with who they really are. But the process isn't about achieving something outside of you, it's about awakening something within you. Because there's a version of you hidden under all the fear, the patterns, the procrastination, and the only thing that can reach it is the process. That's why it hurts. That's why it takes longer than you planned. That's why it tests you over and over again. It's not punishing you, it's preparing you. The promise can't land on a weak foundation. Because the promise isn't just a blessing, it's a burden. And if you're not ready, it will crush you. Think of Moses, 40 years in the desert before he was ready. David anointed as king and still had to wait years in the wilderness. Even Jesus, the Son of God, went through the wilderness before walking into destiny. What makes you think your process should be easy? The greater the assignment, the deeper the preparation. So let the tears fall. Let the silence teach. Let the tension shape you. Because while others are chasing comfort, you are cultivating capacity. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't fold under pressure. You forge under it. And that makes you unstoppable. Because here's what most won't admit: the success they crave would destroy them if it came too soon. Fame without identity is a trap. Wealth without discipline is a curse. Influence without vision is a weapon turned inward. That's why you're not behind. You're being built. Your delays are not denials, they're divine development. You're not in the way. You're on the way. But the road to destiny isn't paved with wishes. It's paved with obedience, repetition, sweat, and sacrifice. It's paved with morning after morning of rising when no one is watching. It's paved with choices no one claps for, with battles no one sees, with faith that doesn't come with feelings, only decisions. And when you commit to that process, when you decide that who you become matters more than how fast you get there, you win. Not just eventually, but eternally. Because nothing can steal what was built with depth. Nothing can shake what was forged in truth. The storms may come, but they won't undo you. The critics may talk, but they won't break you. The losses may sting, but they won't define you. Because now you're not here for applause. You're here for alignment. And the process has taught you how to walk with power, even when it's quiet. Most people only love the light. But you've learned to fall in love with the fire. Because it's in the fire that the gold is refined. Don't envy the ones who rise fast. Envy the ones who rise rooted. Because the ones who skipped the process, they might shine for a season, but they will shatter when the storm comes. The real ones, the rare ones, they're built in the shadows. They're built when no one's clapping, no one's validating, no one's handing out rewards. They're built when no one's watching, except God. And that's all that matters. Because when God is shaping you, He's not rushed by your impatience. He's not impressed by your public face. He's not moved by your need for speed. He's after the substance. So He'll let the pressure press you. He'll let the silence stretch you. He'll let the pain prepare you. Not because He's cruel, but because He knows what's coming requires more than you think you can carry right now. He's not interested in your performance. He's interested in your becoming. Because the promise is never just about you. It's about who you'll impact when you step into it whole. It's about the generations that depend on your healing. The people who'll be freed because you didn't quit in your process. So hear me clearly. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to step. You don't need every detail. You need discipline. You don't need perfect conditions. You need courage. And courage is never loud. It's not the roar of the crowd. It's the whisper in your spirit that says, I will show up again. I will rise again. I will choose the fire over the fantasy. Because most people, they chase the outcome. But the rare few, they marry the process. They show up when it's boring. They stay when it's uncomfortable. They move when it's uncertain. They believe when it makes no sense. They don't just want the crown. They want to become the kind of person who can carry it. That's the difference. That's what separates the remembered from the forgotten. Because the ones who only want the reward, they'll compromise, they'll shortcut, they'll quit. But the ones who fall in love with the becoming, they rise different. They move different. They carry weight that's not visible, but unshakable. And they don't just reach the mountaintop. They transform every step of the climb. That's the invitation in front of you now. Not to sprint to a promise, but to walk through a process. That will make you unrecognizable to the old you. Because if it doesn't change you, it's not your destiny. It's just a distraction. So ask yourself, most people think the waiting is passive. They think it's standing still, twiddling thumbs, praying something magical just shows up and fixes everything. But real waiting, purposeful waiting, is active. It's where giants are carved. It's where your inner world gets louder than the outer noise. It's where God watches to see, will you water the ground before the rain comes? Because the promise you're begging for, the breakthrough you're fasting for. It isn't waiting on the perfect moment. It's waiting on a ready you. And ready doesn't mean flawless. It means formed. Formed in the dark. Formed when no one's clapping. Formed when the only hand you have to hold is your own. And let's be real. There will be nights when you ask, is any of this even working? Nights when discipline feels like suffering. Nights when you'll watch others rise faster, louder, flashier. And that's when you'll be tempted to settle, to take the shortcut, to chase applause, to trade your process for something that looks like a promise but has no roots, no spine, no soul. But if you stay the course, if you don't bow to what's easier, you'll come out on the other side not just blessed, but bulletproof. Because the process doesn't just lead to the promise, it prepares you to protect it. You think God is just preparing a table. No, He's preparing you. He's refining your mindset. He's breaking your addiction to validation. He's training your focus, your patience, your character. Because when your identity isn't anchored in results, when you're not driven by dopamine or applause, you become dangerous to everything that once controlled you. And that's when everything shifts. See, most people, they want ease. They want the crown without the calluses, the recognition without the responsibility. But you were built for legacy. And legacy is forged in silence. It's built in seasons when nothing makes sense. It's born through choices that no one sees, except the future you. So you better start living for that version of you, not the one scrolling at 2 a.m. trying to numb the ache. Not the one comparing timelines and craving shortcuts, but the one who knows, if I master this process, if I stop outsourcing my worth, if I become disciplined in the dark, I will rise into a life no one will believe, including the old me. Because the promise isn't the peak. It's the person you become on the climb. You keep asking for a new life, but are you willing to give up the one that's keeping you comfortable? See, there's a reason the process is so quiet. It's because transformation doesn't shout. It chisels, one painful unseen blow at a time. And the reason most people never walk into the promise is not because it wasn't meant for them, but because it demanded more than they were willing to surrender. They wanted success, but not at the cost of ego. They wanted abundance, but not at the cost of comfort. They wanted peace, but not at the cost of patterns. Let me ask you this. What if your life right now is the direct result of what you've been tolerating? Tolerating excuses, tolerating procrastination, tolerating people who drain you and habits that shame you. You want breakthrough? Then raise your standard, because your standard is your signal to the universe and to yourself about what you believe you deserve. And until that changes, nothing else will. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. And what you are is forged in the things no one sees, the reps you do when motivation is gone, the silence you keep when gossip calls your name, the boundaries you set when your old self tries to resurrect. That's the work no one teaches, because it doesn't sell, because it's not glamorous, because it doesn't get likes. But that's the work that builds the unshakable. And don't think for 1 second that your delay is a denial. Sometimes the process is slow, not because you're being punished, but because you're being deepened. Because shallow success dies fast, but deep roots, they survive the storm. So if you're still here, still standing, still breathing, then it means you've still got purpose inside of you. God isn't finished chiseling yet, and when the chisel is done, when the edges have been carved and the cracks refined, you won't just be ready for the promise. You'll be strong enough to carry it. The world doesn't need another person who's simply waiting for the right time. It needs someone who's willing to bleed for the right purpose. Because the process you resist today is the very thing sculpting you into the one who can hold the weight of what's coming. Do you think David became a giant killer the day he picked up that stone? No. He became a giant killer the day he chose obedience in the fields when no one was watching. While his brothers fought battles, he learned discipline. While they sought glory, he sought mastery. That's the process. And most people, they'll run from it. They'll despise the obscurity. They'll quit in the preparation season because they only ever saw the crown, not the cost. But the crown is always preceded by the cross. The promise is always protected by a process. And the weight of your future will crush anyone who hasn't been built for it. So you have to decide, will you be someone who waits for things to happen, or someone who works until they do? Because destiny doesn't arrive like a package on your doorstep. It unfolds in the discipline of becoming. It shows up in the sacrifice, in the surrender, in the unseen days you stayed faithful, when everything inside you wanted to run. This is where legacies are written. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not when you feel strong, but when you refuse to quit in your weakness. Because that's what separates the ones who want the promise from the ones who are forged for it. So ask yourself, are you willing to lose who you used to be? To become who your future needs? Because the promise, it's not postponed. It's waiting, it's watching, and it's weighing your process. Not your posts, not your goals, not your dreams, but your grit. How you show up when the world forgets you. How you walk when the applause stops. How you endure when nothing makes sense and still keep moving. That's who gets the promise. Not because it's given, but because they became the one who could carry it. So here you are, standing at the edge of who you were and everything you could become. And you already know the promise was never the problem. It's always been about the process. That fire you feel in your chest right now, that's not motivation, that's memory. Your soul remembering who you were before the world told you to settle, before you were taught to doubt your gift, before you believed that comfort was safer than becoming. But the truth is brutal, and it's beautiful. You won't be handed what you haven't been hammered into. You won't carry greatness without first carrying grit. You won't live the promise until you endure the process. You want the life few will ever taste. Then do what few are willing to do. Show up before it's glamorous. Work after it feels good. Sacrifice even when it hurts. And build when nobody claps. That's how legacies are forged. In silence. In surrender. In choosing discipline over drama. Commitment over comfort and calling over convenience. So stop asking for the promise to get closer. Start becoming someone who won't collapse under it. Because the truth is this: if you won't go through the process, you'll never hold the promise. And if you want it, really want it, then it's time to move. Not tomorrow, not next year, now. Rip the mask off, burn the excuses, bury the fantasy that success should feel safe, and step into the pain, the process. The preparation, because your promise isn't waiting on a miracle, it's waiting on you. Now go become what it takes to carry it. And don't stop until the process bows to the person you've become.